Hi, welcome to the Authentically You Show. I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, back again for another amazing episode. If you haven't listened to our podcast before, this is all about talking with people who are doing authentic things all around the world. And I'm so blessed that I get to share some time with these people. Today, I have Tara Murney with us. Tara is an executive, strategic, spiritual life embodiment coach, mentoring conscious leaders so they can transcend and create global impact, freedom, and access the quantum biofield, embodying inner peace, moving from friction to flow, and achieving their greatest dreams and ambitions through higher self awareness, attunement, and pranic healing. She is the CEO of Empath Within, a company built on the foundation of empowering and enlightening women with her teaching and spirituality, intuition, vibrational medicine, quantum touch, and energy medicine such as Qigong, which you're going to have to tell me if I said that right or not, Tara. But Tara, welcome to the show.
Hi, sweetheart. You're close. It's Qigong.
Qigong,
Close.
thank you. I should have asked. I just saw it as I was reading that last thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's such a powerful, like that was one sentence that I was reading. It was so powerful of like everything you're doing. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh wow, biofield, inner peace. Like this is, I mean, we're gonna dig into this because there's so much here, and you had so much more in this bio, but I felt like I was gonna like give away the secrets before we even talked about them.
Yeah, fair
So,
enough.
so because I was looking at this, I'm like, wait, if I read all this, like it's going to take away all that stuff. So I wanted to jump in here. And Tara and I became fast friends. We were working with Amelia Antonetti. And just a little side note, she's a Canva genius. Or wait, is it Canva? Yes, Canva.
Canva.
No, she's so good at it. So I just have to throw that in that I think you're an artist as well, right?
I am.
Yes. So I didn't even see that in here. So
Yeah.
you're an artist as well, which is great because I'm not. I'm stick figures. So I love people who are artists because
It's okay. It's a learning process.
it's just how it is. Yes. So I'm really excited to dive into all of this. And of course, you have this amazing bio here that we're looking at. But I always like to go back, right? Backstory a little bit because how in the world did you get to becoming this spiritual life embodiment coach and mentoring conscious leaders person? And I want to go back a little bit because I know you have a really interesting backstory that our listeners would love to hear about.
Yeah, for sure. So it was a long journey and still on that journey. I don't think we ever really get to like a destination. It's a whole journey experience. But I had a great childhood actually growing up. I have two beautiful parents. And when I was 14, I decided to take a walk with my girlfriend to a local like McDonald's plaza. Just being young 14-year-old girls, giddy, just doing stupid things. It was in the middle of summer. It was really, really hot. I believe we were actually going for ice cream. I can't remember anymore. But I do remember walking into the plaza and a Jeep had driven by. And, most 14-year-old girls, when they see a puppy, there was a puppy hanging at the Jeep. They're like, oh, look at the puppy. And those 5 words changed the direction of my childhood or my adolescent years for many, many years. I was picked up. I was trafficked. This was at the age of 14. And then when I'll fast forward because I'm telling you, it's a Netflix series for sure, Julie. But when I was 15, my mother was involved in a horrific car accident. So she hit her head. She had physical damage to her body, but she also hit her head so bad they diagnosed her with DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So she now had like 30 plus personalities. And so my father was a very angry man. I love my father to pieces, but I think at that time he was going through so much stress. He was now taking care of my mother, taking care of 2 children. He was cooking and cleaning and doing all the laundry and the banking, plus he was working. And it was just a really, really bad time in my life. And so I didn't really have anybody to talk to. I was going through the trauma of what I was going through, the trauma of my mother, my angry father. And so I ended up being a journaler. And at one point from the ages of 14 to about 33, I had 26 journals in my possession. And we had tracked them years later through, I do work with a lot of doctors and I get interviewed by a lot of doctors. And we tracked and traced that I had 18 attempts of suicide from the ages of 14 to 33. So it was a really long journey for me. And they diagnosed me actually with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, high functioning anxiety, and clinical depression. And they told me that I'd be on meds for the rest of my life. And this was just an absolutely no-no for me. My mother had already been on a carousel of meds because of her illness. And I refused. And so what happened was I really just chose to bet on myself. I just kind of got up one day and said, listen, I was always a good kid. I was the kid who'd like, if you drop something at the grocery store, I was the one picking it up for you. I'd hold doors for people. I've always been very, very good hearted. And so I could never understand why all these bad things keep happening to me. And it wasn't until I had my children. I was married for 11 years to a covert narcissist, which was like hell in a cage all over again, which was actually the final attempt at suicide. That it dawned on me that all of these things that were happening to me were actually gifts. And when I speak on big stages and I speak to people, people are like, what? Trauma's not a gift. And I'm not saying that trauma is insignificant or it's not a real thing, because it really is. But I changed my perspective on it. And I started to look at it like, well, maybe God just gave me all of this because he knew I could handle it, and that I would somewhere along the lines, further down the road, I could help other people. And that's exactly what has happened. And so I am grateful for the experience. Those are the Coles notes, but it was a lot of work. It was a really long journey. Super long, Julie, like super
Yeah.
long. And there was times where I would fall back. And so it's been quite challenging, but it's been beautiful. And I'm grateful for every moment, because today I look at my life. I have 3 businesses. I work with the incredible Amelia Antonetti, human behaviorist. Like, I just have so many great things going on. And so it all happened because I shift my perspective, and I just chose to bet on myself. And I think that's really what resiliency is, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you for sharing that and being so
Yeah.
transparent and open. I know that there are other women out there dealing with this. And even when you mentioned the narcissist,
Yes.
um,
Huge
that really,
topic.
yeah, that hits home with me because I do and have experienced for many years different friends along the way who have dealt with that.
Yes.
So gosh, I have people I want to refer to you already.
Yeah.
Um, for, for support on that. And, I just think it's so important. A lot of times I believe that women feel they should suffer alone because if they're really honest about their struggles, people will think they're weak. And
That's
culture
right.
has this,
That's
this
right.
real, I guess for me, because I experienced this real thing of like, I can't show weakness because I'm already considered weak as a woman.
Right.
So I need to suffer alone and I need to be quiet about my suffering and I need to just suck it up because
Right.
how else am I going to work? And I really feel like that's shifting. And obviously we'll talk about She Talks as well because we have to
Yes.
get you to a
Yes.
She Talks.
Yes.
Um, but that's really one of the visions and missions of She Talks is allowing women to share their story in a very transparent, honest way so that other women, like you said, don't have to suffer, don't have to go through that. They can find a way to make it through it or find someone who can help give them some guidance and mentoring, which is what you do as a coach. And I just feel like that's still lacking,
It is.
and I'm sure I still do it too. I'm sure there's times where I'm like, I don't want to tell anyone about this because like this would be so embarrassing, or I don't even want to know I'm dealing with this because that I don't want people to think I struggle, right? And I'm sure people be like, oh, your life is perfect, and I'm like, you should join me in the shower when I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
I
Got a
live
bottle
there
of
so
wine.
so I just appreciate that because it's a lot of times I think as women, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel stronger every time I'm transparent with someone,
Yeah.
every time, because if one person is like, that's what I needed to hear. I'm like, well, that, like you say, like, that's what I was brought here to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I also really appreciate that you look at this as a blessing in disguise. That you have every reason to be in the corner sucking your thumb saying my life sucks, but instead you chose a really positive point of view. And I think that's so important in the world today.
It is.
I mean,
It is.
right, we could pick a million things of why our life sucks and why we shouldn't go on, but just hearing that from you is really inspirational to me, and I appreciate you sharing.
Aw.
So
Aw.
I want to go a little bit more. I mean, this whole sentence, okay, you got to educate me. Quantum biofield embodying inner peace. I need to get educated on this. You're talking about conscious leaders, which I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
You're talking with moving from friction to flow. I need a little help on this, and I've heard of pranic healing, but I'm not fully educated. So fill me in on what
Okay.
all of this you're doing.
So this is what I'm talking about. Like, sometimes our challenges or trauma, whatever you want to label it as, are actually gifts in disguise. And so when I was really young, I was a very spiritual kid. And like I was the girl, no word of a lie, that you would find we had a forest behind our elementary school. And so during recess, it was always Tara Murney that was missing. And they would find me in the forest, like talking to the trees. I was very rooted in self. I was. And so when I went through this journey, I kind of lost that. But I think that's actually what pulled me back out of it. So, for example, when we talk about quantum and we talk about like, so I live at the lane of like spirituality and science. I'm deeply rooted into both, like neuroscience. I'm fascinated by the human brain. I actually originally was going to university for criminology, and then life just took me a different path, and that's okay. But I'm fascinated by humans and why they think the way they think and why they do the things. And especially being around Amelia Antonetti, like I'm even more curious. But I fell into this avenue, this lane of energy. And I realized that through my whole journey, I was going to the hospital, Julie, like every week thinking I was dying. And the doctors could not find anything wrong with me. Mind you, I wasn't telling them what was happening to me, but it was my fight or flight that was constantly off. And I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, thought I was dying constantly. And I realized, well, we're all energy. And I am carrying shame. I am carrying grief. I feel so unloved, unworthy, all of the very suffering and struggling energy that is we're made of. We're made of energy. And so I tapped into by using, like, I learned to do Qigong. I learned to do Hakomi. I learned to heal myself with very ancient wisdom. Like we've known this forever. We just we don't teach it in schools. And I learned to move my energy in my body that was stuck, that was causing me to be sick. I moved it out of my body and I shifted into higher vibrations. So I'm talking like empowered ones, like the gratitude and the love and the joy and all of the beautiful energy that we actually have within us. And now I get to go and I get to teach these people. And so I think one of my biggest struggles is in the business world, I'm known as like the woo-woo girl, right? And so I'm on this mission to change the definition of woo-woo, because woo-woo really is just magic, and we're all magic. We have it within us. And it's really this like self-discovery journey. And so I've been working with Amelia to get myself into the business space. So I've been spending a lot of time with, like really mentoring conscious leaders. So they have multi-billion dollar businesses, but they really haven't done the inner work, and they're really never fulfilled. You can have all the money in the world. I know very wealthy people, very successful people that have exited 8, 9, 10, 12 companies, but they're not happy. And it's because they haven't taken that journey within. So I take them and we get to explore and we go in and we find those things. And so for you, for example, when you said you don't like sharing things, that's because I already know that you're afraid of what people might think of you, or that you're afraid of being criticized or judged. I am no longer like that. I used to be like that. And a lot of women are like that. And so I come in and teach them how to remove that. And it's the most like, you wouldn't even have to pay me for the rest of my life. There's just something so profoundly satisfying from helping another person along their journey so that they can show up and be the best, highest version of themselves. And it's through the quantum field. It's through energy. It's all energy. People come into your whole, like your journey, your space based on your vibration, and they leave also based on your vibration. I had all this bad stuff happening to me, right? Which was very low vibrating. Well, no wonder I was trying to kill myself. No wonder I was like stuck in shame and grief and all this horrible things. And a lot of people are going through that daily, and you would never know. And they go home and they drink and they pick up other little things, habits, maybe sex habits or drinking and drugs to numb that feeling. But that's not how you get rid of it. It's through self-discovery. And so that's what I do. That's the kind of lane that I'm in. And it's been incredible, because just like you said, if I could just get one person to shift their perspective, to change their belief system, to start betting on themselves and see how much potential we all have as human beings. Like I'm not some crazy anomaly. We're all like this. We kind of limit ourselves. And a lot of that, and this is probably going to, I'm sure I'm deeply rooted in education, and you've learned that already from me. So my biggest goal is not even just with the women. I'm very rooted in helping women, but the young girls, because I wish somebody had been there for me. And there wasn't. There was no, it's not talked about. It's like, you can't say that. You can't talk about that. We don't talk about that stuff. And so that's the lane I'm in. That's the lane I'm going for. And that's the one I'm going to end in. So that's what I want part of my legacy to be. Even one person, just one person, because it'll ripple.
I love that. And I was just talking with someone the other day. I've talked to a lot of people in a day.
Yeah.
You know me, I run crazy fast, but I was having a conversation about, it was a very young 18-year-old girl who wanted to interview me.
Aw,
about what I've done, and she was wonderful, and I loved her, and we were talking about this, and she was saying the same thing. She was saying, "Everything you're saying is so resounding with me. I wish I would have heard this
yeah,
10 years ago," because
yeah,
she's in the process of finding her path. And I always say it's the worst thing in the world for us to shove an 18-year-old into college and say, "Pick your path now for the rest
yep,
of your life," right?
absolutely.
And I'm big on education. I have all my
I know.
degrees. I started out wanting one path and starting to follow that because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And
Yep.
eventually that changed. I always tell people what you want at 18 is going to change at 23. It's going to change
Yeah,
at 25. It's really going to change at 30.
yep.
And that's okay. You know, we all have to start somewhere. But has been trying to figure out what her path is, right? And desperately searching for this. And I hear this over and over. My daughter's 13. I know you have, wait, is it 4 kids, 5 kids? Am I
So I
guessing?
have 3.
Wait, 3. Why did I
I
think
have
you had 5?
3 because my husband now has 2, so we have 5. We
Okay.
have 5, yes, but 3 of them are actually mine, 2 are my stepchildren.
Okay. So I still count that as 5,
Yes,
you
oh, I
know?
count they're my kids. They all know
But
it.
but so I have a 13-year-old daughter who's in what I consider the toughest time of
Yeah,
young girls' lives,
for
junior
sure.
high, right? And junior high, I was talking to another mom and I'm like, "So I'm trying to understand, why do girls become so mean in junior high? What's the transition from 6th to 7th grade where they suddenly go from being these sweet kids to these
Yeah,
really mean girls?"
yep,
And it just was another conversation of like, how can we reach them? How can we grab them and say, you know what, it's okay. When you get to junior high, you don't have to become mean and make fun of other girls or do these things. And so I resonate with what you're saying because I'm living it right now, like
yes,
these kids
yes,
and my daughter. And I'm just like, these are the girls we need to grab now. They're
yep.
our future leaders. And so I love that. So what are you doing exactly with the youth side of this?
Okay, I love this. This is the part that lights me up the most. So, and I'm sure you are very well aware of this. There's a lot of red tape when it comes to education. Like, so when I come in there, they're like, "Oh, you can't have any religion, anything religious," and I'm like, "It's not religious. It's like it's human design. It's human nature. It's human behavior." And for me, I really wanted to get in front of the grade 9s, the 10s, the 11s for sure, both female and male actually, because I think as much as the girls have a lot going on, so do the boys. We have this toxic masculinity and we teach men that they got to man up, they can't be emotional. And that's why half of these guys, like, especially here in Canada, I'm huge on statistics. Our suicide rate for young boys from 18 to 23 is astronomical, Julie.
Wow.
Like, it is disheartening. So, my biggest goal is to get in front of these kids. Now, I'm very lucky because I happen to know a lot of people in my area that I live. I know the mayors, I know everybody. So, they let me come and speak, which is good for me. I just need to get in front of these young girls and have this conversation. And I do very well at connecting with people in general, but with these young girls, I've been doing really, really well. But I'm trying to get it to actually be like incorporated into the school system, which has
Mhm.
been my biggest challenge in life, but I refuse to give up because it's something that I think is needed. So I've been doing a lot of research, my own work with my daughter, because she's been through this already. And we've got all of her friends involved, everybody. And it turns out that the reason why they're like that is because they're looking to belong.
Mhm.
They don't know where they belong. They feel so like, think of grade 9. When we went to grade 9, it was overwhelming. We didn't know
Mhm.
if we should go with this group, or we go with the Valley Girls, or do we go with the quote unquote the geeks that like there's no, they just want to belong. And so what they do is they come out of alignment. They don't know who they truly are, their authentic, real self, and they change who they are to feel like they belong. And that's why they're so depressed. That's why they're so lost. That's why they can't focus on school. They're not getting great marks. Their social life is upside down because they're not in alignment with who they truly are. So they're never really happy. They're putting on masks. They see Instagram. They feel like they have to do this and be like this and look like this. And it's just a huge mess. And then Tara comes in there and gets them to find out who they truly are. And Amelia's talked about this a lot. This is huge for me. We tell these kids that you got to graduate, you got to go to college, university, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, an accountant, so you can be successful in life. And the reason why they're all miserable is because that's not what they want to do. That's not their purpose. That's not the things that light them on fire. I tell my kids all the time, you want to go out in a canoe and paint on canvas for the rest of your life? I don't care. As long as you're happy, that's your purpose. And so I'm really good at digging through and finding everybody's purpose Amelia calls it the zone of genius, which is pretty much the same thing because we all are so uniquely designed. Your purpose is very different than my purpose, and we can find similarities and parallels in our paths to help each other grow to collectively, but everybody is so, so different. And so it's really important that we do that work to help them find alignment and so that they can walk in their authentic self. I'm a fond believer that half the reason why everybody is so miserable in this world is because they're not truly who they are. They're pretending to be people that their parents want them to be, or that their husband or their spouse wants them to be. And that's why and we just came out of a pandemic. So that's on top of it all the
Oh my God.
isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And I want to ask you a side question. How do you feel social media has affected our young girls and the
Oh my God.
way that they are responding to it?
Yeah, that's a topic. That's a whole new podcast. So
Right.
I actually put up a picture. I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram. It was a picture of a lady sitting in the shower sideways. And I said, this is true. It was something along the lines of like, stop comparing yourself to other women because this is what the average woman actually looks like. I
Mhm,
got so much feedback from that because a
mhm,
lot of parents are like, yes. But unfortunately, our kids are on TikTok, which is one of the biggest platforms. It trumps Facebook, it trumps Instagram. And all these girls have filters. They all have like they're not who they are. You can slim down these girls' waist. There's like apps where literally I could change my whole entire face. So I
mhm,
had a stroke at 23. This eye is much smaller than this eye, especially when I'm tired. You really notice it. Like I notice it tonight because it happens from the muscle never regaining back. They used to stick rods in my face and try and shock the muscle, and it never came. But that was from stress and from a stroke at 23. I can put an app on my face and you would never notice it. You would never, but I did a lot of work. I had to show up and like had this self-confidence for years. I wouldn't get on camera. These girls cannot get on camera if they're not comfortable. So they just put apps on their face. And so
mhm,
no wonder they're like not in alignment and they don't know who they are because they're not actually showing up as themselves saying, hey, I have a slanted eye. Hey, my hair's crazy today. It's like, it's this mask, these constant masks. So they
mhm,
never ever figure out what true fulfillment in
mhm,
life is. And the worst part for me is that I feel they're full of gifts and they're buried. They're
mhm,
buried beneath everybody's expectations and society's standards and what makes you successful and what makes you pretty, what makes you, marriage material, like all this crazy
mhm.
stuff. We didn't have that. I had a pager. I don't know what you had, but I had a pager.
Yeah,
My
I didn't
husband
even
had a brick phone. Like we didn't have this.
yeah.
And I
No, well,
don't,
and what's funny is my mom thought pagers were for drug dealers, so she wouldn't let me get a pager. She'd be like, "No, only drug dealers carry and
my
doctors
dad said
carry
that. Yeah.
pagers,"
My
you
dad
know?
said that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get a cell phone till my maybe senior year of college or maybe after that. I mean, I remember taking a computer class and, like, the internet was barely going,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when
The dial up.
social media started, I really fought it because I just wasn't into it, and then I started having clients ask us to help them with it, so we had to get
Yeah.
into it, and then it came down to, "All right, this is marketing, this is business, like, we gotta be on this all the time creating
Yeah.
content," but I don't even let my kids get on social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
I've got
Well,
it
you
completely
also, because
blocked.
you're super intelligent, you also know it creates that dopamine. You know the
Mhm,
ramifications of that. And
mhm,
it's just so different than how you and I grew up.
yeah,
So I let them go on it, Julie. I'll be honest, I do, but I time it. Number
mhm,
one. And number two, it's like a give take relationship with me and my children. You want to have your phone, no problem. You get it for this amount of time, and you're only allowed on this. You're not allowed on TikTok. You're not allowed on this. But then they have to give me what I want. And what I do is I take them back out. I take them outside. We walk through the forest. We walk through the parks. I teach them how to ground. And my children, I'm very proud. I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful. They're very well-rounded children. They're very well-rounded in their emotions. They know who they are, what they want. They're curious. We were curious as kids. We lost
mhm,
that. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
they're really doing well in that whole self-discovery, maybe because their mom is who she is, but there has to be a balance in life. And I know
mhm,
so many families, they just leave their kids. Let them sit on the phone, that's why they're never
yeah,
happy. And
yeah,
it's just so sad. And I don't think it's going anywhere. We're going towards the metaverse. And so I
mhm.
think I want to come up with an app, or I want to come up with something, I don't know, specifically for these youth so they're not sucked into that completely. So I don't know. I've been really ruminating on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree, and it's true, and it's in so growing up, I remember, like, 17 magazine and
Yes,
Cosmopolitan,
me too.
right? And I would look at those and look at how pretty the women were and all that stuff, but I never knew that they were touching up
Yeah.
pictures and, you see these women and it was so unrealistic, it seemed so unattainable, and
Yeah.
and no one ever back then would say, "These are all touched up,"
Yeah.
spent 3 hours in the makeup chair. If you take it a certain angle, they look skinnier. So it wasn't much later in life that I learned about that. But you had said something too that no one ever talked about anything. And it's true. I mean, no one talked to me about my worth growing up. No one talked to me about my path. There was an assumed or an assumption in culture that I would go to college and I would get a reasonable degree in some area that would make me money, and that I should get married right after college to a man with a really good job,
Yep.
and then have babies.
Yep. And have the white picket fence. And the
Yeah,
white picket fence.
and I didn't do any of that. But and it's interesting when I would come back home, and meet with, different people we grew up in a small farm community. Oh, you're not married yet? Well, you're 23. Well,
I
you should have
know.
already had 3
Cut it in
babies by
half.
now. Oh, you haven't had children yet? Is there something wrong?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I just wanted to like travel the world and,
Yeah.
experience life. And so, having kids, it's really interesting how it opens your eyes
It does.
to what it is. I mean, even like when when I talk about my body, I very much have gotten away from ever saying I feel fat or I feel ugly,
Good.
because I don't want my daughter to hear that or mimic that. And, that's something that it's like, I've become very conscious of that, of
Good for
how
you.
and what I show, because I realize she is absorbing
Yeah.
everything that she sees. She may not say it, but she's absorbing it.
She
And
hears
so,
it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the work you're doing with youth is amazing. We need
Thank
to
you.
multiply you like 300,000 times. We
Aw,
have
I
this
love you. I
we
love
need
you.
it in the schools. My
Yeah.
husband is an elementary teacher. He deals with this day in, day out. He sees it. He's seen the evolution of kids over the last 18 years and how they've changed with the technology and the social media. He said one of his biggest issues in his classroom is kids on Instagram,
Yeah.
bullying each other on Instagram. It's crazy that he's dealing with social media in the classroom.
Right.
So I just think that's amazing. Well, I want to get to, we talked about your youth and we talked a little bit about you working with Amelia. But I know you also have a podcast that's coming
Yeah,
out soon. So I
I
want to
do.
talk about that.
Yeah, so Tara is one of those girls, I think, because life has taught me this. I was like, I'm telling you, it will be a Netflix series. I am going to do it one day. I'm putting it out into the universe. I have been through so much that I've learned so much. And every time something is frightening to me, I've gotten to the point, no word of a lie, Julie, if it frightens me or it makes me really nervous, I run at it. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to do a podcast, and then I got a little overwhelmed. And I'm sure you know, because you have your podcast. Like, I'm not tech savvy. I didn't know what kind of microphone to get. Like, it was just too technical for me. And I kept putting it as an excuse. And then I was frightened. I was like, what if nobody hears my messaging? And then I was like, no, that's not what Tara does. Like, Tara's going to do it. And then I heard Tim's story. Do you know who Tim's story is?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So he was on Clubhouse one day and he heard me talking about, I think I was telling my story. I was talking about forgiveness, I believe. And he said, hey, Tara, he unmiked and he's like, do you have a podcast? And I was like, no. And he goes, you should, because if you did, I'd listen to you every day. And
Mhm.
I was like, wow, if that isn't the world whispering, I don't know what is. And
Mhm.
so I just started a podcast. Of course, it's directed towards the youth. I was really going to niche it to just boys, but I decided to open up to both. And of course, educators like your husband and parents,
Mhm.
because sometimes I don't know if you ever remember the show The Nanny. Do you remember the show The
Yes,
Nanny?
yes.
Okay.
Fran Dresser, right?
Like,
Or
no, the one where she would come in and the kids were like, running rampant, or they had like they were
okay, okay.
diagnosed with ADHD. I think she was Scottish or British, and
Okay,
she'd come
okay,
in.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. And through behavior modification, right? Amelia Antonetti, these kids didn't have any diagnosis and they weren't sick. It was just behavior modification. And when she changed the parents' behavior, the kids changed. And so
Mm,
I really wanted my message to be heard by the parents too, because sometimes I think these parents don't recognize and aren't accountable for their own actions. Like
mhm,
how you were just saying, I'm very careful with the self-love and the self-talk, even the words that I speak to myself, so that my daughter doesn't, like, she hears all that beautiful stuff. Well, some parents don't even recognize that. So I really wanted it to be focused for both the youth and the parents. And so we're just doing recording right now, but it will be launched September 15th, I believe, and it will be available on Apple and Spotify. And it's called the Visioneering 5 Experience, actually.
awesome.
And it's me and 4 gentlemen. So it's very interesting. We just recorded some of our episodes. The banter is organic. There's tons of golden nuggets in there. I provide lots of value, tools, and exercises that at least the listener can take away. Because if it can change one home, it ripples for me,
Mhm.
right? And so this
Yeah.
has been one of my biggest goals, and I'm doing it. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited. Yeah.
This is awesome. Well, when it comes out, obviously tag me on it. We're gonna
Oh, I
share it
will.
everywhere.
Yeah.
That'll be amazing. And it is true. Everything you're saying, it resounds with me because once again, being involved, obviously my husband in the elementary world, me in college,
Oh,
I
yeah.
get to see the kids after they go through elementary and get to me. And that evolution I've watched over the last 22 years is really interesting to see
Oh, for sure.
how they've evolved and how desperately this is needed. And I
Yes.
always joke around. I'm like, well, if our kids get screwed up, it's probably us. I always joke with my husband because we're the ones like pouring and feeding into them. And of
Yeah.
course, obviously the goal is not to do that.
Yeah.
But what we do and what we say and how we behave is definitely affected. So
So
I'm
important.
super excited about that.
Yeah.
Our time is getting we're
Yes.
running out, and we could just talk forever.
I
I
could.
don't
I
know, just
literally could
we
talk with
could
you
just
forever.
go on forever because everything you're doing is near and dear to my heart. And I love it because your genius is not my genius, but it's something that I desperately need and other people desperately need. So I hope that people will connect with you. And if someone wants to connect with you for coaching, where should they go? How should they get to you?
So right now I've hired somebody to revamp my website. So that's probably not the best option. So Instagram, at Tara_Murney. I'm on there a lot. I like to provide a lot of like really useful, valuable tips and tools. You can reach me there or LinkedIn. I've been living a lot in the LinkedIn land because I've been working with a lot of conscious leaders that own businesses actually that are at the age of where like they're really successful, but they're not like fulfilled. So they're like 60, 65, they own incredible companies, but they just want more of life. I've been spending a lot of time actually with those guys and getting them to tap into more of their purpose, not their
Mhm,
skills and their talents, but their purpose, and getting them to really tap into service. Like,
mhm,
what is the legacy that they want to leave? And maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe it's a fundraiser, maybe it's, I don't know, opening up maybe a spa or a retreat or something. And so that's been a real great space
mhm.
to play. And I'm kind of new there, but I'm there every single day. So just send me a message and just say, hey, I heard you on Julie's amazing podcast. And then I'll reach out to you.
Yes. And you are awesome. Like you are on that all the time. Like
Thank you.
anytime I send you a message, it's like, boom, I get something back. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, she's so
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
So I love it. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you guys who may be listening, didn't catch all the links, don't worry. We will put it when we put the podcast out, we'll put all those links out so you can grab them. You can either watch this or hear this. And we're on all the different channels out there. So as I always say, live, love, laugh, and always
Ah,
be your authentic self.